you, thank you. We're also going to try to do some live coding, but I don't know. We'll see.
I think we're going to need your support a
We
little
will
bit.
definitely need your support.
Encouragement.
We just pushed the last build like an hour ago. So what could go wrong? Awesome.
It's so funny that Shruti said that Igor likes bananas because I didn't notice it until this trip. Igor hoards bananas. Like, I'd be so surprised if he didn't have one strapped to him right now. So it is a fun fact. Hey, everyone. We're so excited to be here in Salt Lake City. We actually had a little adventure ourselves yesterday. And we wanted to think about how to make this talk come to life for us.
And for you.
And for you. And that means we wanted to bring the edge to life. To us, that meant going to Bryce Canyon. Took a little detour. And so today, we're going to talk all things edge. What is it?
Bryce Canyon's edge?
Bryce Canyon's edge, the web edge,
Okay.
all of it. What is the edge? How does it work? How do you use it? What is it good for? What is it not good for? And we're going to do this all as told through our adventure in Bryce Canyon. And not even what is just the edge, but what is, should we say it at the same time? Nah, I'll just say it. Beyond the edge.
We descended down into the canyon. We took photos. We'll show you. It's awesome.
Let's get started. So, hey everyone, I'm Nevi. I'm a nice little person from Cloudflare who works on developer products. My first hobby is eating New York pizza because I'm a New Yorker. Any New Yorkers here? Yeah. My second hobby is talking to developers about their pain points.
And I'm Igor. I like building stuff for developers. I love web, and I love enabling new things to be possible by everybody, all of you. So before we go and start talking about the edge, let's talk about the journey to the edge. And I'm not going to go and talk to you about how we rented a car and went down to Bryce, but I'll talk to you about how edge happened and where it came from. Because it was a surprise to me when I started doing research a couple of years ago into this area that edge computing has been something that has been talked about for over a decade now. Back 2010 or so, telecommunication operators started talking about 5G. What is 5G going to look like? And one of the ideas they had was, well, what if we put servers into our antennas so that we can bring compute very close to the mobile devices, so that instead of you talking to some data center far away, you would talk to a server that is directly in the radio tower of a 5G tower. So this is where it started. This is what is actually happening today, but it's a very special purpose thing. It's not something that regular web developers care about. It's used for like routing traffic and congestion management and stuff like that. But that kind of technology became appealing in other ways, in other areas. And one of the things that became important for developers, especially recently, was reduction of network latency. And this is what edge is about. It's about compute, not necessarily in the 5G tower, but somewhere close to the user. And how can that compute be used to run your application? So before we go and talk about edge, let's talk about how we build applications today and what can edge do for these applications.
So let's start with Jamstack. It was a term that was coined a couple of years ago. Let's kind of explain how this whole process works. You have a user, right? That user wants to use a browser to connect to Jamstack. The browser then makes a request to the web server. And the web server is like, oh, I have some static assets I should probably send over, and a lot of JavaScript. And the JavaScript is then downloaded to the browser to be executed. And then you've got application code that runs in the browser only. Then the app realizes, I probably need the data, makes a request to the web server. The web server talks to a database to get the data, and the database responds, sends the data to the client, and can finish rendering the app. Really great, almost. Good developer experience. Very convenient.
Yeah, you don't need to run your servers. You just have static web server, upload your build static assets or build artifacts, and you're ready to go.
But there's a problem.
Yep.
And that problem is it's client-side rendered. So sometimes things show up with some time. And that's not great for our end users, right? So convenient, but slow. So let's go ahead.
The next, so Jamstack was good because it was very quick, but quick to build, but not necessarily quick for users. So we started exploring like how can we do better, and the answer to that was server-side rendering, and full stack came to life.
So here you have the app that runs on the client side and the server side, and this is your typical Shoutout Remix app. Instead of the browser making the request, we are making the request on the server side. And so then the server can talk to the database, which is quick because the database is near to the server. And the server can create some HTML representation, but now you really need to download the JavaScript. And we're back to our original JavaScript story that I just told with Jamstack.
But now I have to run servers.
But now you have to run servers.
Or use serverless.
Or use serverless. So let's take it a step further.
So this is all good, but usually if you need to run servers or if you use serverless, the compute is not necessarily very close to the user. It's usually centralized. You're probably using AWS, or GCP, Azure. There are these big data centers. You have to pick a region where your application is going to run. And that's where the application runs. So if you pick the right region for users and your users are in that region, you're good. But if your users are all over the globe, then either some of them get subpar performance because they need to connect to a data center far, far away, or you need to manage a multi-regional setup, which is a headache, and you probably don't want to do it. But there is a hope. There are solutions that are coming up that can make this easier. So this is where Edge comes. Edge is, how about this compute actually happens much closer to the user? Many people say that Edge is a runtime. I would disagree. I think Edge is a location. It's where the compute happens. And to run the compute, you need some kind of runtime. And typically, like all of us know JavaScript, we're used to Node.js. Node.js is not the best kind of runtime for the Edge because it's a little bit too heavyweight. It was initially built for stateful applications, not for serverless applications. In order for the Edge to scale and be super scalable, super low latency, you really want it to be serverless. So Node is out. We need something else. We probably don't want Rust. We don't want some kind of like stuff we cannot code that we cannot reuse between server and client. So we want JavaScript VM. And the up-and-coming solutions, almost all of them are built on top of V8. Not everybody, but almost everybody is built on top of V8. So basically, we take the VM from the browser, and instead of running the code in the browser in a V8, we take the V8, deploy it at the edge, deploy the application to the edge, and run your application instead of in the browser, we run it at the edge in V8. What would you use it for? Typically, most of the use cases today are around A/B testing, authentication, geolocation, or some like customization based on your location, rewrites, internationalization. All of these use cases don't need data. They are mostly stateless operations or transformations, or you need just very little data at the edge to perform these. So your application still can run in your traditional setup in AWS, whatever you have. But you have the edge that is in between your application. And why is Edge interesting? When I started doing research around 2021, I went to Apple headquarters to buy some stuff from Apple Store, and I already back then suspected that edge computing is going to be big, and 5G is going to make it real. So ever since like mid-2021, I've been like testing networks and just seeing like how close we are. And it blew me away when I went to Apple headquarters and ran my test on my iPhone connected to 5G network, and this is what I got. I got 2.4 gigabits per second downstream latency, downstream bandwidth, 54 megabits per second upstream, and 9 millisecond latency. 9 milliseconds. Imagine your compute is 9 milliseconds away. Some of those heavy things that you do in the browser, now you can do on the server because the server is 9 milliseconds away. But that was 2021 and Apple headquarters where they were trying to like show off. So I've been testing around the world as I travel, and it wasn't quite the same elsewhere. 5G is not everywhere yet, but it's been deployed quite a bit. But today, actually on Sunday when I was flying in, I ran my test in Denver, where I had a layover on the flight on the way here. We ran the test, and this is what I got. Denver Airport, 11 milliseconds. It's becoming real, and it's going to become real very quick. So just very quickly, what can you do with this, with the compute at the edge? Typically, I'm not going to go through this diagram. You can look at it later. But Edge is in between your application and the browser. So when the browser makes a request, Edge can intercept it, can augment it, can do things with the request, sends the request forwards it onto your real application where your application runs. And then as the response is coming back, Edge can make further transformations on it, whether it's localization, whatever it is, and sends it back to the client. This is cool. This is really cool. But what if we actually deploy the application to the edge? What would that look like? So instead of having a web server, what if we deploy the application to the edge? In this case, we basically get rid of the web server. Our edge talks directly to a database, and the browser talks to the edge. This is really cool, because now you can do server-side rendering at the edge with dozens of milliseconds in latency. This is something that was not possible before. Edge makes it possible.
So how do you use the edge? Like how do you even go about doing this? If you've used any of these companies, you probably already have used the edge, or they have capabilities that are available to you to use the edge with very little hassle. And Cloudflare, where we work, is a space that typically is known for their CDN, but we've actually been involved in edge computing for quite some time, 2015, I think we started. And now we're trying to make the edge more accessible to developers to ship code. So let's see it in practice. Let's deploy a little Remix application to the edge. Can I get a little?
Yeah, we need help here.
Good vibes.
Is this big enough? Shout, please, if you can see it, if it's not big enough. OK, so we really want to make it simple for you. We want to make it very easy for you to come and onboard on the edge. So we create a single command, npx create Cloudflare. You run it. And we're going to ask you, what is it that you want to build? So let's try remix conf demo. OK, what are we building? Static site? Let's do a full stack.
Full stack.
Angular? Are we building Angular?
Yeah, no.
I don't think that would work.
Wrong crowd.
Another conference.
Yeah, another day.
So let's pick Remix. And guess what? We don't want to tell Remix how to build Remix applications. We want Remix team to have full say in how Remix applications should be built. So we just call into the Remix API and hand over control and be like, yo, do something, build us application. So we call into create remix, and this is just a typical create remix flow. Fingers crossed that NPM's not going to break on us. So we are just running the application, downloading all the NPM dependencies, everything you typically do when you build remix application.
And this is really nice, right? Because we don't know the best way to deploy, or for Remix. Remix knows what to do, right? So we're not going to make an opinion on how Remix apps should be deployed. Remix should. So this is why this command is super cool.
Cool. So we have now Remix application built. Not there yet.
Not yet, but just
we are at the edge.
We're excited.
We are very close to the edge. So we built the Remix application, and we actually now configured it so that it's super simple for you to deploy to Cloudflare, to the edge. And we ask you, do you want to deploy? Well, let's say yes. So let's deploy. Now comes the tricky part. Let's see if this works. So what we are doing now is we took everything that Remix built. We just used the traditional Remix build system. We get all the assets, the client-side static assets and the server-side assets. And now we are deploying it to the edge, both the static assets as well as the server-side compute. And we are deploying it to the whole world, because edge is everywhere. Let's see what's going on. Still doing something?
Deploying.
Deploying. Yeah, there should be.
Creating.
Okay. Creating. Okay. It's happening. It's happening. So, okay. Almost there. Now I'm trying to decide if I should fill in the space or just let it finish. Is it going to do it?
I think it needs a little applause.
Okay. Look, we have a URL. Okay. We have a URL now, and we're just waiting for all the SSL certificates to be provisioned, and we want this application to be truly global. So we are not deploying to just single node. We're making sure that it's deployed to Earth. Is it going to work? Is it going to work?
Yeah, so just think about this application being everywhere, 275 cities, across everywhere, every city you could think of, almost every city.
Let me just go to the browser and just see what happens. Oh no! Demo fail!
That's all right.
It's not squats. No, it's coming. It's just okay. Let's go forward, and then we'll come back. It's going to happen.
So had it been deployed, which it will be, some of the things that you can do on the network, right? 275 data centers globally, load of 10 million requests per second at peak, and this is the coolest part, in my opinion. But like less than 50 milliseconds away from users. So user requests the application, it's there within 50 milliseconds.
And when we say 50 milliseconds away from users, we mean 95% of internet connected people around the world. We don't mean like here in Salt Lake City or in the US, all around the world. I actually went to Europe to visit my family, and I spent a week with my sister. She lives in a village, not a great internet connection. I built an application, deployed it to Cloudflare, and I was able to connect to Vienna data center from a village in Slovakia, and the latency of my application was about 20 milliseconds. 20 milliseconds.
And it's cheap, right? Inexpensive to get started, and also cheap to operate and scale.
Yeah. We built this amazing CDN. We've been building the CDN for 13 years. The network is very easy for us to operate and very cheap for us to operate. And we want to pass on the cost savings to you. So it's easy to start. Many people are successful with their free plans and just running like production applications with free plans. But if you get to like significant scale, we can talk, and you don't need to be worried about it. It's fraction of what you typically pay today. Well, one thing we didn't talk about is, okay, we built the application. Let's actually check on it. Maybe it's working now. Is it? No. No.
I'm going to give enough applause. It's fine. That's all right.
Okay. What we should see is basically this. This is the Remix application deployed. This is the default application. This is one of the many rehearsals that we've done for this talk. So I think we built like 50 applications in the last 8 hours.
Yeah.
And deploy them to the world. So maybe we are pushing it a little too far. But what we didn't talk about is that we haven't added data. And application without data is not very useful. If you add data, then interesting things happen. This diagram that we had here becomes very bottlenecked on the part where the server-side rendering happens and talks to the database. We have just one request here, but really, in order to render any application, you're probably making many requests to the database. And in reality, if you run your full stack application at the edge, your database might be very far away, because edge is everywhere, but your database is usually centralized. When I came to Cloudflare, I thought, oh, it's going to take us just a year or two to move data over to the edge. But now, a year and a half in, I'm like, OK, it's going to be like 5 to 10 years before data is to the edge. So rather than moving data to the edge, which we should do, but it's going to take us a long time. In the meantime, we should figure out if there is a way for us to move the compute closer to the data, but still keep things at the edge.
So here's a quick visual to just TLDR what the previous diagrams were about. So users in one spot, data's all the way on the other side of the world. These are approximate locations. Don't at me. But look at these round trips times, right? 150 to 250 milliseconds back and forth and back and forth. But like, it doesn't need to be like that, right? What if we just brought the compute closer to the database? And you know what they say.
Go beyond the edge?
Go beyond the edge. So you could have something that looks like this, where the compute is close to the data, the back and forth trips are smaller, and the 150 to 250 milliseconds happens once. Think about what that does for the performance of your application.
So this looks like magic. And it would be cool if it existed. But it doesn't exist yet. But it will exist next week. So we were hoping to show you a demo today, but things are like literally still being tested, scaled, and everything.
You know how it goes.
You know, like we barely got basic stuff working. But next week we'll be ready. Next week we're going to be announcing smart placement.
Yep. And literally all it takes is one click in your dashboard.
So the same application that we already deployed to Remix, you just go to the dashboard, you click, you enable smart placement, and we will start monitoring what the application is doing, what kind of databases it's talking to. And based on that, we'll determine the optimal location of the compute. So there's nothing for you to do. You can monitor, make sure that we are not screwing things up. But that's all you have to do. You just take your existing Remix application, you enable this, and you're ready to go. What will happen from the user's perspective is that user will connect to the nearest data center that Cloudflare has near them, wherever they are. So they still enter the network at the edge. But we recognize that the user's trying to talk to an application that is smartly placed, and we'll create a tunnel from the edge to the optimal location, and then spawn the application near that database, near whatever it's talking to. The application will handle the request, and through the tunnel, the response comes back to the user.
Wrapping up quickly, couple of action items for all you out in the audience. Sign up for early access to smart placement. You can use the QR here. Follow us on Twitter for some really exciting announcements coming up next week. All next week, product launches, feature launches, updates, all of that good stuff. And the last thing is start thinking about moving data to the edge, right? If we can't bring, so right now we're bringing compute closer to the data because we can't bring data to the edge. But we're working on it, right? And we want everyone else to start working on it too.
Yeah, we will need your help to move the data to the edge, so this needs to be a collaboration. In the meantime, we have smart placement that makes existing applications work. But we do believe that in order to create hyper-context-sensitive applications, applications that really adjust to the user, where the user is, what device it is they are on, we need the data at the edge. That's when really cool things can happen. This will take us many years, and we need your help. So please start thinking about this. Start talking to your team worker and coworkers, and thinking about like, what would it look like if our application had data at the edge? What could that enable, and how could we take our existing applications to that future? Thank you.
And don't forget. I think I'm off. All right. All right. Thanks.